Richard Harrison, 70 years old, 4 decades building a logistics empire in Chicago from a single leased truck. I did not scream when my daughter-in-law ripped the wig off my dying wife's head in front of 300 wedding guests. I did not cause a scene. I calmly walked onto that stage, covered my trembling wife with my own suit jacket, and handed my daughter-in-law an envelope she had been dying to open. When she tore it apart and saw what was inside, her smug smile disappeared into pure terror. Let me tell you how we got there. My wife Patty is 68, battling late-stage lymphoma. The chemo had taken her hair, her strength, sometimes her spirit. Our 2-story house had become impossible for her. So 6 months before the wedding, I found a ground-floor condo 10 minutes from her oncologist. Since I refused to leave her side, my son Lucas, 32, my pride and joy, offered to handle the purchase. I handed him a cashier's check for $150,000. 3 days later, I went to confirm the funds had cleared escrow. My branch manager printed the endorsed check and slid it across the counter. The payee wasn't a title company. It was a luxury auto dealership in the Gold Coast. I didn't panic loudly. I folded the printout, thanked her, and drove straight to my son's house. What I found in his driveway confirmed it. A brand new Porsche Cayenne, dealer plates still on, and Victoria, his fiancée, posing for selfies beside it like she'd won something. When Lucas saw me, the color drained from his face. He recovered fast, though, a hidden lien story, an investment in Victoria's new luxury real estate job, a promise to repay me with interest. Victoria cried on cue, hugged me, and handed me a thermos of homemade herbal soup for Patty. I played the broken, trusting father and drove away. But in my mirror, I watched Lucas pull out a cheap burner phone the second he thought I was gone, and frantically wipe it clean. Men hiding secrets don't carry untraceable phones for nothing. At the hospital, Patty told me the soup always made her feel worse, but she drank it because Victoria went to so much trouble. That timeline hit me. Her decline had started exactly when the soup deliveries began. I took it straight to my old friend Dr. Gregory Hayes, her oncologist, and asked him to test it quietly. 45 minutes later, he came back gray-faced. The broth was loaded with concentrated St. John's wort, a compound that neutralizes chemotherapy in the bloodstream. Victoria wasn't nursing my wife back to health. She was poisoning her, slowly, deliberately, to clear the way before the wedding. I poured the rest down the sink, hired private nurses to guard Patty around the clock, and banned outside food entirely. Then I drove to Lucas's empty house while they tasted wedding menus across town, found the burner phone taped under his desk, and cracked the passcode using the name of his childhood dog. The texts were wiped, but he'd forgotten the voicemail. Victoria's voice, sharp and impatient. "Tell the doctor to sign the terminal prognosis already. We can't use the grieving family excuse to make your dad transfer the commercial collateral into the joint trust." Commercial collateral. My warehouses, the financial backbone of my retirement, locked in an ironclad trust that required my direct authorization to touch. I brought the phrase straight to my attorney, Thomas Gallagher. What we found stopped my heart. A forged deed of trust, my signature perfectly mimicked, securing a $2.5 million loan against my commercial property. The entire sum funneled into a shell company run solely by Victoria Kensington. Thomas wanted to call the FBI immediately. I told him no. A quiet legal filing would let them lawyer up, delay, and drag Patty through months of depositions while they hid the money. I wanted something else. Total, undeniable collapse, delivered on their terms, in front of everyone who mattered to them. So Thomas found the loophole. Commercial loans get resold on the secondary market. Through a blind offshore trust, we bought the note directly from the bank before they could discover the forgery themselves. I became their sole creditor, the silent hand now gripping their fraud. Because forged origination documents trigger an acceleration clause, the instant fraud is proven, the entire debt comes due in 24 hours, no grace period, collateral seized on the spot. Then Thomas traced the money itself. It hadn't stayed in the shell company. It bought an unlisted mansion in Aspen, paid in cash, while they cried poverty to me over a $5,000 medical bed. I played my part flawlessly for 3 more weeks. I apologized to Lucas for doubting him. I handed Victoria a second cashier's check for $150,000 as a wedding gift, and watched her eyes flash with naked hunger before she thanked me with tears. Walking away, I heard her whisper to Lucas, thinking I was out of earshot. "I told you the old fool was too distracted to notice the warehouse." Confession complete. At the bridal fitting, Victoria shoved Patty's wheelchair into a dark corner so it wouldn't ruin the aesthetic, used her for staged photos, then mocked her wig in front of the whole bridal party until my wife broke down in silent tears. Lucas watched his mother be humiliated and looked away. That was the moment my paternal love simply died. I recorded it all. I said nothing. I was already 3 weeks from detonation. By the rehearsal dinner, Victoria was openly cruel to the staff and toasted the room with a thinly veiled jab about the older generation learning to let go. I smiled and sipped my water. That night, in a dark parking lot, Thomas confirmed it. Default notices notarized, FBI briefed, warrants signed, agents on standby. Everything was armed. I just needed the moment. The wedding day came wrapped in 300 guests, imported roses, and a fortune built on stolen money. Lucas drank himself sick with guilt at the head table. Victoria worked the room like a queen. When she spotted Patty's wheelchair near the stage, I heard her mutter to her bridesmaid that my dying wife was ruining the aesthetic. During her reception speech, drunk on champagne and power, Victoria abandoned her script entirely, declaring she was done pretending, that weakness was a choice, that the weak needed to be pruned away. Then she walked straight toward my wife, grabbed a fistful of her wig, and tore it off in front of everyone. Patty's bare, chemo-ravaged scalp was exposed under the chandeliers. Her sob was the kind of sound that stays with you forever. Bridesmaids giggled. Lucas looked at the floor and did nothing. I stood up. I took off my jacket. I covered my wife's head and shoulders, whispered that she was safe, and turned to face the woman who had just publicly humiliated a dying woman for the crime of existing. I walked to the stage. Victoria, still drunk on her own cruelty, assumed I was there to surrender, to hand over some deed, some final proof of her dominance. I gave her an envelope instead. She tore it open herself, grinning, right up until she read the header, Notice of Acceleration, Demand for Payment in Full, $2,500,000. The color left her face entirely. I took the microphone from her shaking hand and said it plainly, so the whole room could hear. You didn't borrow from a bank, Victoria. You borrowed from me. And because you forged my signature to commit federal bank fraud, the loan is due today. Right now. Then I told the entire ballroom everything. The forged deed, the shell companies, the Aspen mansion bought with stolen money, and finally, the poisoned soup meant to kill my wife before she could inherit anything. Phones came out. Gasps turned to outrage. Victoria screamed that I was a senile old man trying to ruin her life and ordered security to remove me. That's when the doors slammed open. My attorney walked in flanked by 3 FBI agents. They read Victoria her rights on the stage in her wedding gown, cuffed her as she screamed and thrashed, her tiara clattering to the floor. Lucas collapsed at my feet, sobbing, begging me to stop it, swearing he never wanted any of this. I looked down at him and told him the truth. A man who watches his mother be poisoned and humiliated and does nothing is no son of mine. Then I walked away and never looked back. Victoria and Lucas never saw a honeymoon suite. They went straight into federal custody, denied bail as flight risks. Every asset, the mansion, the Porsche, the jewelry, was seized. I cut Lucas out of every inheritance document that existed. The recovered $2.5 million didn't go back into a retirement account. It funded an experimental immune therapy program for Patty. 3 months later, we sat by Lake Michigan, her wheelchair gone, her hair growing back in soft silver and chestnut curls, her cancer markers dropping faster than anyone expected. We don't look back at that ballroom anymore. We only look forward. Family isn't an unbreakable bond just because of blood. Real love is built on respect and integrity, never greed. When the people closest to you wear masks to strip away your dignity, walking away isn't cruelty, it's survival. Protect your peace. That's the only inheritance that matters.